I think we'll work on the hat for a little bit. Hopefully you all have it base coated with some kind of a burgundy. If you look at your photograph, you're going to see that there's like little wrinkles and things in it. And I'm doing that with Naphthol Red Light. It's like my favorite color. And it is a Traditions color, but it's like a reddish orange. So if you need to mix it, I can give you some ideas for mixing it. But the burgundy and that reddish orange really work well together. So let's see, do I have? So cadmium orange and true red, you could mix that together. And it's almost more red with a touch of orange in it. I'm going to be using the extender blending method again, and I'm going to be using the double-ended brush, the bigger one. Okay, now, while you were working on the face, some of you realized it was drying too fast. Those people might want to moisten the hat. Some of you, it was getting too blotchy. You might not want to moisten the hat. You might want to just let the hat be dry and put a drop in your paint. Okay, so you've got to adjust to your environment because it will be different everywhere you paint. I'm not going to wet my hat this time. I'm only going to put a drop of extender into my paint color. But if yours was drying too much, you might have to, moisten the surface a bit, but I'm going to try it the other way. Let me start in a little area down on the hat here. I want to create a little highlight area down here on the tail of the hat. So I've got, extender in both ends of my brush. Clean that out. And then I need just a drop of extender into my paint color, but I want to use this thick. Okay, I don't want it thin. I want to use a lot on my brush. So I'm really plumping that brush up. Don't be skimpy. I want a good coverage. Okay, so for down here, right along that edge, I'm going to make kind of like it's a big teardrop, okay? There again, I want a nice solid color there. Then I'm just going to soften that edge. Okay. And I know I've got too much light here. Let me get my stand again. Seems to work better if I tip it up out of the light. Okay, now this hat is a furry hat. This does not need to be smooth like you would have in your cheeks. In fact, there's times that I'll put this on with a deerfoot brush and stipple it in so that I get more of a furry texture. So this time, I don't mind if you stipple it just a little bit as you blend, okay? Now, if you don't get enough color, go back, get some more just solid color, put it on again, and then just get rid of that edge. If it's blotchy, too blotchy, you've got too much liquid. Dry your brush out. Use less. Use it drier then. If it's not blending, not enough liquid. So you've got to find that happy medium. Now, if I needed to, I could come back and I could stipple burgundy back into it. If I get too carried away, I can just stipple some of the burgundy backwards. Okay, now, the cool part about this technique is I can actually draw in wrinkles rather than just like I used to have to side load and everything had to have an edge to go up along. I can create some more realistic looking wrinkles. So up above that area, I want like a great big spot here that's going to pop forward. And it doesn't have to be a perfect shape. And then I'll pull a little line down towards the outer edge over here. So this way I'm going to get where it looks like it's dipping in places. So now I'm going to pull a thick line on the outside edge, go down to the tail. So look at that silly shape that I've got going in there. And anything close is going to be fine because wrinkles are wrinkles. And then I'm just going to tap the edges, get those to blend in. It's okay to be furry and a little bit of texture this time. If I have trouble blending it, then I stipple with a little burgundy to soften it too. See if using less extender in your brushes works better this time. And I can even stipple in the middle of the color this time too, because it's all right if it looks like fur. If you take too much off, go back, put some more on right away. Let's try to stay out of the liquid this time. And keep wiping your blender brush off because you're picking up color, and so I'm constantly rubbing it off on my paper towel. Okay, and I just want to keep going with these wrinkles and highlights. So I've got, it's got to come up over, the top edge of the hat here somewhere. And I've kind of got, and have it connect down in. I can have it connect into that other area. And then just kind of stipple a little on each side. Okay, so now let's say I wanted there to be more of a dip under here, which I do. Let me raise this up a little bit. I'm going to have this come up a little higher. Let me get that in there first. Let's say I made this too solid right above the fur. I want it to have a shadow there. So if you look at that front corner where the fur is touching the hat, you'll see a little shadow. It's not all highlight touching the fur. So if this happens, this is where I'll come back with my burgundy and just kind of pat some of that in there. So I'll come back because I want to create a shadow right here above the fur. So I'll set that back in and then just, kind of tap where it's touching my highlight. So I can put my shadows back in if I need to. And I do see that there's areas where I've, taken out too much. Just going to put some more of the highlight back in because If you end up where you make a hole, stop and blow dry it and then put some more paint back on again. Because if you just keep putting wet paint in a hole, it's just gonna keep separating. So, and that is a little bit of what I got going on here because I couldn't see what I was doing. So let me dry mine quick. Okay, hopefully that'll be better. Want it to be nice and bright. And you, really, once we get the fur and everything on here, you're not seeing a whole lot of this hat. It's basically the tail that you're kind of seeing. The area up above, I want to keep that a little darker, and I can even later put a little wash of some black over, especially the left side, to kind of tone that down a little bit. And see over here, I'm going to have hair and fur on that end of the tail of the hat, so I'm not too worried there. But I want to create some wrinkles coming in up on top here too. And just kind of catch that bottom edge. Maybe one more in the middle here somewhere. Okay, and then maybe just hit that with the blow dryer just so you don't put your hand in it. But we're gonna just kind of let it be. We can still play in it and fix it up afterwards, but we just needed a little bit of initial color down there to start with. And then I think what I'd like to do is go back and get his eyes put in so we have somebody nice to look at us. So clean your brushes really good in water because you've been using, you know, the reds and the burgundies, and rinse it real good. If you need to use a little bit of a brush cleaner, do that. Really get that red out of there. You'll find that the extender, even just using that, it'll help pull the color out of the brush as well. So the colors we need now for the eyes, phthalo blue, which is, let's see, what is that in the conversion? That primary blue or Prussian blue would work. Never hurts to have a little bit of your original iris color. So aquamarine or whatever blue you use to base that in. Let's also have some burnt sienna. So on our eyes, we're going to need to put a black pupil in there, and then I want to, well, in fact, here's our color sheet. So we're going to be putting a black pupil in, and if you see, the black pupil is touching the top of the eye, but we want to keep it nice and round. If we flatten it too much, he's just going to look sleepy. And then we're going to put a black line above and a burnt sienna line below. So that's the first step. So you'll need your small liner brush, your small round. If you need to use a pencil to draw in your circle, you could. You know, another thing that's nice to have is, you know, one of those circle templates that you could draw in, but anything close. Unfortunately, it's bigger than a brush handle, so we can't just do the dip dot trick. And I'm going to just start by filling in the pupil, and I want it nice and round. Now, the larger you make the pupil, the more innocent looking the eye is. When you make the pupil little, it looks devious. So I've just got 2 circles with the black, and then I'm going to outline across the top of the lid, and that's where the eyelashes will be later. And I have to do all my shading before I do eyelashes. So thin line across the top of the lid, and that's black. And then the line on the bottom I'm going to do with burnt sienna. And if you get a line too wide, sometimes you can just take a little water on your brush and, you know, go kind of skim along the edge of it and thin it. Okay, then we're going to skip to number 3, and we're going to put the phthalo blue shadow in around the outer edges of the iris. Okay, ignore the shadow that I got across the top. I think I'm going to make it easier on you if I skip that step till later. So we're going to do phthalo blue in there. Thin the phthalo blue with water and just do a float, or you can put a drop of extender in there to thin it in case you need to wipe it off. Either one works. But what I want to do is I want to get kind of a outline on the outside edge of the iris. Maybe just kind of kind of dab some of that phthalo blue in along that outer edge, and then just soften that a little bit with my blender brush, just barely. I want to still be able to see my original color around the pupil. So if you accidentally, you know, filled it all in, go back and put some of your original color next to the pupil. Oh, and you know, I'm looking at my instructions and I was thinking, okay, this aqua seems awfully dark. And you know what? I used Laguna on the original one. I'd used this Laguna color, so it is. So I'm going to add some highlight in my iris. So I'm going to mix my my aquamarine that I base coated with and white together. Make it a pale color. Put just a touch of extender in it in case I need to soften it. And I'm just going to tap that in around the iris. And it's more, I get a little thinner towards the top. It's more that bottom. So I'm just going to slightly tap that in. And then just blot it gently with my blender brush. So I've got phthalo blue on the outside, and then a lighter version of my eye color on the inside next to the pupil. Just gently tap it. And if it's easier to use a liner brush, you can. So since I got this on the brush, I'll do it in reverse on the other eye. I'll tap in the highlight first. Because if you look at your eye, this is not a smooth color. You've got all these little flecks of color in your eye, and so it doesn't need to be a smooth line. So I tapped in my highlight. Now I'm going to tap in some phthalo blue on the outer edge. And then just gently tap my blender brush to soften so it's not quite so hard. Okay, and it's good to put a little extra phthalo blue right under the line of the eye on the top, because that'll start your shadow on the top of your eye. And if you run into the black, it usually just melts right in anyway. So little extra right under the eyelid of that phthalo blue. Okay, then I do like to have a little bit darker frame around the iris, so I take black and outline the iris, just the sides. You don't need to do across the bottom where the lid touches. Just on the outer edges of that iris, little thin line of black. Okay, and then if you look at photo number 4, you're going to see that there is little white tapped in inside the bottom of the iris, right under the pupil, and then a little mark in the pupil and off to the edge of the pupil. Now, I used to make those round circles, but actually I like making them a little bit more square now, rather than a perfect round circle. Because most light, when it hits your eye, a lot of times you get more of a square reflection than a round one. So I'm going to just use my titanium white, little teeny tip, and you can use your, I'm using my small Dirty Dancer, but if you need to use your liner, you can. I just want a little bit of white just on the bottom under the pupils. And I'm just tapping it and I'm not blending it. Just tapping it in for a reflection. I'm not going all the way up. I want to just keep it on the bottom. And then I'm going to thin the white before I do the ones up inside the eye. I'll thin it a little bit. And I'll do a little square in the pupil and another little one kind of coming off the edge of it. Now, if you still have just a little bit of your shading color that maybe isn't quite so dried up, you're going to tuck that in the tear duct, because we don't want that as bright of a white. So the shadow color that you used on your face, if you'll tuck that in the little tear ducts. Okay, now under the eyelid, inside the eye, I want a little shadow because you've got a lot of bright white up in the top there, and you want the eyelashes to be casting a shadow over the eye up in the top of it. And every time I do it, I'll use a different color. I can use this one. It looks like I did use the black, really, really watered down. Sometimes I use burnt umber, raw sienna, or sometimes I even take a little artistic license and use the color of the eye, like the phthalo blue, so that it makes the eyes look more blue, or a phthalo green to make the eyes look more green. But I did use a little wash of black, so really, really, really transparent. And you can use either water or extender on this, but what I want is just right through the top of the eye here, a thin line, but then I want to soften that edge just a bit. See, and I didn't clean my brush, so I had phthalo blue on it. So let me take that out and try it again. I'm just going to lift it right out. Just got extender on that blender brush, and I can lift out what I didn't like. Clean my brush this time. Okay, little wash of black, and then just soften that edge. Don't come too far into the eye. It's just enough to help set that eye in. And now we got at least somebody looking at us. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to have you do, I think, is we're going to put the blush on Santa's face. And come out a little bit here. So when you look at your photograph here, number 3, what we want is we want a blush color in the bottom of his cheek area here. Now, I still want to kind of leave that little spot empty. And if you fill it in, we're going to make it darker after anyway. But um, I want blush on the bottom of his cheeks, the bottom of the nostril, bottom of the tip of the nose. May or may not sneak a little on the bottom of the other nostril. And then we'll use the same color in the lips as well. So originally I used to use a color that was called Blush Flesh, I believe. And then there was another one, Medium Red Rose. However, my Naphthol Red, which was the color we highlighted in our hat, taking that and either adding white or our flesh color, the warm beige, makes almost the identical color. You also could use, let's see, Coral Blush. It would be really pretty. That's an Americana color. That would work just fine too if you have that. Otherwise, mixing your Naphthol Red Light and your flesh color will work too. I'm going to try the Coral Blush this time since I got it handy. Let's see how it comes out. Okay, so this is the Coral Blush. This is the Naphthol Red, and if I were to add the warm beige to that Naphthol Red, I can come up with something close. So, and they're just slightly different. One's a little more pinky, but either one is going to work. So whatever you've got. And it's probably more warm beige than Naphthol Red. It's a pretty strong color. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my double-ended brush. I'm going to check to see if I cleaned it good enough or not. Get a little more extender in my cup. I did. I was good. I got it clean. So I'm going to put extender in both ends of the brush. All right, now remember, each of you had to do your extender a little different because of it was either drying too fast or not enough. So I need you to follow those same rules that you used when you were working on this morning. So if it was dry, you need a little more. If it was blotchy and too wet, use less. I usually at this stage, I don't put the extender on. I could, but I'm going to just try a little drop of it in my color instead. So not much. Sometimes even just what I had in my brush after blotting it is enough. But I want to plump up the brush with the color. Okay, and then on the cheek, I'm just going to come right down and around the bottom of that cheek, and then I'm going to soften that edge. And do that on both cheeks. Now I could have floated this on this time too if I wanted to, but because I had extender originally in the piece, I would use extender in my angle brush. I gotta flip this upside down to blend the other cheek. Okay, so I've got blush, and the more you do this technique, the faster it gets. Just have to kind of play with it. And you really just got to kind of play with the extender because you want that in between. And all you're trying to do is just make it last long enough that you can blend. You don't want it sopping wet. Okay. And then I want to do the bottom of the nostril, tip of the nose, and blend those also. And I do like that coral blush. That's a pretty color. And I am going to put a little bit on that other nostril too. I feel like it needs a little blush on that bottom of that other one too. And then we're also going to do the lip. And the lip almost just gets filled in, but I want to put, I want to try to keep that little bit of highlight in the center. And if you fill it in stripy, it'll start adding more to just kind of looking like he's got wrinkles in his lip. So here's before I blend it. I'm just really striping it in. And then I'll just soften it a little bit. A little bit more in the outer corners. A little less in the front center. And you do want to overlap up into the mustache just a bit because our mustache has to come down over that corner of the lip to camouflage where it stopped. And that's all there is for the blush areas. The under part of the eyebrows, we just need some black in there, and it's okay to be scruffy, and it's okay if it's maybe just thin it down a little bit. But I just need some black underneath where my white is going to go. Otherwise, it's not going to show. So just kind of roughing it in. And the bushier you make his eyebrows, the more character he gets. So I just want to fill in with some, and I could have used my rake brush to fill it in. I just used the round. Water it down. While you have the black on your brush, another thing that you can do is clean up underneath the nose area. It's like I want you to outline the bottom shape of the nose, and this little nostril, try to make it rounded instead of pointed, because all that area that's going to be mustache, I need it to be black so that our white will show up. But that black needs to come right up underneath the nose itself. So I'm just going to clean up that area while I got the black on my brush. Okay, so number 3, take a look how they're all kind of going a little bit wonky here, this way, that way. And then afterwards, we can add a little bit of gray in the bottom of the brows. So we're going to start with just the white. Now, typically, a real eyebrow, the hair, it starts out pointing towards the nose and then it starts pulling back. So it kind of pivots there, okay? Santa is got a little bit of craziness going on, so his may vary a little bit. So I'm just going to use a liner brush and kind of flip-flop my strokes as I pull them out, filling in the eyebrow. And even though I'm pulling back, I'll kind of flip some up a little bit here and there too. So just some little thin lines of white filling in. Don't be afraid to flip them a little this way and that way though as you go across. Gives them a little more character. And if anything, add a few more dead center just to pump up that middle area. Just some little small strokes because it'll help give it more dimension. I'm not going all the way to the edges. I'm just tapping in a few little more tiny white strokes through the dead center, and that's going to help pop it up a little more. Let's see if I can get the light to not shine on this quite so much. I don't know if you can tell a difference between the right one and the left one. I put some through the center on the right, and that's going to pop that center area up. Just little ones dead center. A little bit more solid in the very, very middle. And then if I just use some dark gray to add a few lines coming up from the bottom, it kind of finishes it off. So I could use the black watered down, or I can take the black and the white and make a dark gray, which is what I'm going to do, just to be on the safe side. About equal parts, black and white. And then I can just add some little lines on the bottom half coming in just a little ways. I could have floated across the bottom, but I think it's just as easy to do the little lines. I just need a little more darkness on the bottom. And there's times I'll do this with burnt umber. It gives it a little bit more of a warm look. Okay, then we're going to actually go to the first layer of our beard and our fur. So I'm going to zoom this back out again. Okay, the first thing that I want to do is on my hat up here, I want to get some black lines with my rake brush. So I'm going to just take some of my black, add a little bit of water in there, thin it down. And I want to break up that edge. See, is that showing? I just want to break up that edge with some furry strokes where I base coated, just along that top edge. Now let me tip this. I know you got shine going on there. That's better. So on the top edge, and I'm also going to pull in the forehead. Just a little bit. Just want to make sure I don't have a, a really solid line where my fur is going to be. Now, I don't know if you all have what kind of rake brush that you have, but I'm really loving these black silver by Dynasty because they have a really good separation at the tips. And so I don't have to work as hard. Let's see, get it over here maybe. There we go. I don't have to work as hard getting the individual lines because they come separated really nice. Okay, so I want to start with a gray to establish all of the direction of the fur and the beard and the mustache. Okay, and I'm just going to use my 1/4 inch rake brush. The fur, let's see, what should we start with? Yeah, we can start with the fur up on top, I think. Okay, so the fur, you can either mix, let's see, was the dark gray, was that a good color? Yeah, dark gray is a good color. So either mix black and white together. Another color that would work would be, let's see, is Gray Storm dark enough? Gray Storm would work. Zinc is another dark gray in the Americana. So Gray Storm or Zinc, they would work if you don't want to have to mix. We just are going to establish, I'm going to try the Zinc just to see what that looks like. I think that'll work out perfect. Okay, so a little bit of water. Okay, now when I go to do my fur up on top, what I do is I start and I'm going to pull it in clumps. Okay, this is the underneath part. And I'm going to hit that front edge. I kind of give it a little bit of a flip. Okay, so that's row number 1. Okay, I'm not going to go all the way across the top of the hat. I want to do these in rows. Row number 2, step back a little ways from that first one and create another row of fur till I get to the top. That's row number 2. And I'm going to keep making those vertical, right? Yeah, vertical rows instead of trying to go all the way across the bottom, all the way across the top, because I'm going to get a better layout. I still want to see some of the black showing through, so really look at your photograph. You'll see in step number 1, it shows the direction, and it shows there's still quite a bit of black showing through. This just starts to establish the direction. All this gets covered up, but we'll have layers of different colors this way. Doesn't have to be, it's okay if some areas end up being a little bit solid. This is the underlayer. We're not worried about having fine lines yet. Ignore where your greenery is in the hat. Go right through that. You don't want to avoid it because it'll be too hard to go around. So I go all the way to the back of the board. Make sure you go do some over the forehead too. The little tassel on the bottom of the hat is same color. And take a look at the brush strokes. You're just coming down from the center of the hat and add a couple little sprigs coming up a little bit on the side there too. Then I go to the mustache. I like to do the mustache before I do the beard because that way I can kind of avoid it better. Otherwise, I have a tendency to go through it and lose where my mustache is. So I'm going to be a little more careful this time. But what I want to do is I'm there again, I'm just establishing the direction of the hair, but I'm going to curve off to the left on the left, and I'll curve to the right on the right, somewhere in the middle. It'll kind of straighten and switch directions. And I want to catch the top edge of the lip there so that I'm starting to camouflage that. Now, a lot of times what happens to me is I lose the black when I do my mustache, but I can come back and sneak that in afterwards. I'll outline the lip with black and then I pull black lines up into the mustache. So I'll wait till the mustache is totally done before I worry about having to touch that up. And you know, there's lots of different mustache shapes. And if you look a lot at my different Santas, they all have a little bit different. It's fun to change it up a little bit. And even my gnomes, they all have a different type of mustache. Okay, so now I'm going to do the hair on the side of his head. And if you look close, I've just got like little curves just flipping out. And then I've got some that come and flip back the other direction. And there again, we're not worried about individual lines right now. Eventually, we'll be actually adding hair into the cheek line area, but for now, I'm just gonna just kind of pull some strokes in the direction of the little curls. The upper part, I do want to just barely catch the edge of the skin so that the face will be framed a little bit better. So I'll do the two sides of the head. Overlap the skin a little bit. I'm going to have to turn my piece to get a better angle here. And we all are going to end up with a totally different looking beard. It's kind of like your signature. Everybody has a different little wiggle here and there, and that's just fine. So the upper part, I do catch a little bit of the skin. Not worried about the bottom of the cheek yet. And then we have fun with the rest of it. Now, don't think that you have to go all the way from top to bottom with one continuous stroke because it's really hard to do that, okay? So what I do is I'll just kind of sketch and pulling the brush, but I keep following through, you know, with the same direction, but I'm not trying to get one continuous line. And I think it's easier to go backwards to get the curls or the tips of the curls. So just short little strokes, but you kind of pick up from where you left off It's like I'm just sketching them in with a paintbrush. And then in between little areas where you can't tell where the curl is, you just tuck a little bit of the hair in here and there just to fill in the gaps. But go backwards to do the little tips. And if you ended up with a great big huge blotch somewhere, we can always come back and put some black lines back in, but this is not the stage we're worried about thin lines yet. We're just trying to get the flow of the hair. We don't want it filled in solid. Still want to see some black here and there. Sometimes I'll turn it upside down. It might feel better getting a different angle to pull your brush. And definitely when I do my highlights, I do pull from the tips up, so then I will for sure turn it upside down. And I think I'll just leave mine alone. I think that's good enough.